Shalom, brethren. We continue our Genesis to Revelations study, searching for what is needed for eternal salvation. Always remember you should read or listen to the whole chapters yourself, as I am only highlighting certain verses and points that may go overlooked. Reading from chapter 7, verse 1. First point. And Yahweh said unto Noah, Come thou and all thy house into the ark, for thee have I seen righteous before me in this generation. This is God talking to Noah and his three sons. Reading from verse 2. Of every clean beast thou shalt take to thee by sevens, the male and his female, and of beasts that are not clean by two, the male and his female. Of fowls also of the air by sevens, and the male and the female, to keep seed alive upon the face of all the earth. For yet 7 days, and I will cause it to rain upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights, and every living substance that I have made will I destroy from off the face of the earth. Okay, my comment. Noah was righteous in God's eyes. Righteousness is defined a few places in the Bible, one being in Luke chapters 1 verse 6, speaking of John the Baptist's parents, it says, And they were both righteous before God, walking in all the commandments and ordinances of Yahweh, blameless. We should also remember what we read earlier on about Noah, Genesis chapter 6 verse 9. These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a just man and perfect in his generation, and Noah walked with God. Thus Noah knew the laws of God as clean and unclean animals later taught to Israel in Leviticus chapter 11. So righteousness is keeping God's commandments. Noah took 7 pairs of clean animals, as they would be needed for sacrifices, which we'll read later on in chapters 8 verse 20 below, and only 2 pairs of unclean to replenish the earth. My point? Laws of God existed and were followed before they were given to Moses or Israel, before the nation of Israel was even formed, and before they were any Jews, as we call them today. Thus, they are for mankind and not only for the Jews, as is the excuse used today, or for Israel. Continue from Genesis chapter 7 verse 6. And Noah was 600 years old when the flood of waters was upon the earth. And Noah went in, and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives with him, into the ark because of the waters of the flood. Verse 11. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, the 17th day of the month, the same day were all the fountains of the great deep broken up, and the windows of heaven were opened. And they that went in male and female of all flesh, as God had commanded him, and Yahweh shut him in. Verse 23. And every living substance was destroyed, which was upon the face of the ground, both man and cattle, and creeping things, and the fowls of the heaven, they were destroyed from the earth. And Noah only remained alive, and they that were with him in the ark. Verse 24. And the waters prevailed upon the earth 150 days. My comment. At chapter 7 verse 23, we see everything was destroyed. Even the innocent animals, etc., were also destroyed. This is similar to Exodus chapters 19 verse 13, when God was given the commandments to Moses, and he told him to tell the people to stay back, because anything that came towards the mountain, man or beast, would be killed. It reads, whether it be beast or man, it shall not live. So I said, God shut Noah up in the ark. He didn't leave Noah to shut the door himself or anything like that. When we are obedient to him, God, he protects us, etc. As he did with Job, saying from the devil couldn't take his life. And also in John chapters 10 verse 29, Yeshua speaking says, "My Father which gave them me is greater than all, and no man is able to pluck them out of my Father's hand." Note Noah's age on entering the ark and on coming out in chapter 7 verse 6, chapters 8 verse 4, and chapters 8 verse 13 to 14. Most people think he was in the ark for just the 40 days and 40 nights. The heavens were open, the rain came down. But it was actually over a year. The references: Genesis chapter 7 verse 5, verse 11, verse 13, Genesis chapters 8 verses 13 to 15. There was a yearly cycle, obviously because it tells you the year and the months and the days. This yearly cycle was observed by the sun and the moon that we read about in Genesis chapters 1 verse 14, and it did not start in January. It started with around about Passover time, which is end of March, stroke April. Okay, continuing from Genesis chapters 8 verse 3. "And the waters returned from off the earth continually, and after the end of the 150 days the waters were abated." Verse 13. "And it came to pass in the 601st year, in the first month, the first day of the month, the waters were dried up from off the earth. And Noah removed the covering off the ark, and looked, and behold, the face of the ground was dry. And in the second month, on the 27th day of the month, was the water dried, and God spoke unto Noah, saying, Go forth of the ark, thou and thy wife, and thy sons wives with thee." Verse 20. "And Noah builded an altar unto Yahweh, and took of every clean beast, and of every clean fowl, and offered burnt offerings on the altar." My comment: though Noah noticed the ground was dry, he, unlike Eve in the garden, who used her own eyes when the devil made her see things his way or a different way, in Genesis chapter 3 verse 6, Noah did not rely on his own eyes. Seeing the ground was dry, he waited even more time until God instructed him to come out. It is also not coincidence that the new beginning started on the first day of a year. Similar, we will read later on, to the raising up of the tabernacle with Moses and the congregation in the wilderness in Exodus chapters 40 verses 2. That says, "On the first day of the first month shalt thou set up the tabernacle of the tent of the congregation." Verse 17. "And it came to pass in the first month, in the second year, on the first day of the month, that the tabernacle was reared up." I said, note the burnt offerings of Noah is later given to Israel in Leviticus, chapters 1 verse 3, which means there was a sacrificial system and a way of pleasing God which Noah knew and practiced. Because it tells us that God smelt the I can't remember how it's supposed to be, but God smelt it and he was pleased. Something savour is the word. Okay, moving on to chapter 9 verse 1. "And God blessed Noah and his sons, and said unto them, Be fruitful, and multiply, and replenish the earth." Verse 2. "And the fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast, on the earth, and upon every fowl of the air, upon all that moveth upon the earth, and upon every fowl of the air, upon every that moveth on the earth, and upon all the fishes of the sea. Into your hands are they delivered." Genesis 9 verse 3. "Every moving thing that liveth shall be meat for you, even as the green herb have I given thee all things." Verse 4. "But the flesh with the life thereof, which is the blood thereof, shall ye not eat. And verse 6, whoso sheddeth man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed, for in the image of God made he man. My comment. Replenishing the earth and charge over the animals are the same instructions God gave to Adam. Genesis chapters 1 verse 22, verse 28, chapters 2 verse 3, Genesis chapters 5 verse 2 and 9 verse 6. It's also the same as what Cain killing Abel. Whosoever shed blood by the hand of blood, it will be replenished, be required of them. And chapter 9 verse 4 about not eating food with blood in it is the same law passed on through Moses in Leviticus chapters 17 verse 10, which I'll read in a minute. But you can also see it in 17 verse 11, verse 14, 19 verse 26 and Deuteronomy 23. 17:10 says, and whatsoever man there be of the house of Israel, or of the strangers that sojourn among you, that eateth any manner of blood, I will even set my face against that soul that eateth blood, and will cut him off from among his people. So note the commandment includes the house of Israel and others. So again, things are never only for Israel or for the Jews only. That's the excuse today. We are only 9 chapters in, and already I have identified for you the pre-existence of several laws of God before they were given to Israel by Moses. The last few verses for today, chapters 9 verse 11, God speaking again, and I will establish my covenant with you, neither shall all flesh be cut off any more by the waters of a flood, neither shall there any more be a flood to destroy the earth. And God said, this is the token of the covenant which I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you, for perpetual generations. I do set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be for a token of a covenant between me and the earth. Verse 19. These are the 3 sons of Noah, and of them was the whole earth overspread. My comment. The covenant with Noah is the first, the rainbow one, evident by the rainbow. Yet we still have rainbows today, although other covenants followed, which we read, the Abrahamic covenant and so on. Thus, those who like to quote a reference to a new covenant of Jeremiah 31:31 or in the book of Hebrews chapters 8 and 10 to say that a new covenant means the old one has ended are clearly wrong. When we buy a new garment, we do not throw away the old ones necessarily. So, more than one agreement can coexist, the same way as we can buy new things and still retain the old ones. Genesis chapter 9 verse 22, and Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and took his 2 brethren without. I'll leave you to read that account. Noah drank wine and fell asleep and so forth. But the reason I want you to draw your attention to this is this incident is going to be referred to in later parts of the Bible, and the consequences will also follow in later readings. But for now, remember, it is another law later passed on by Moses. Exodus chapters 20 verse 12. Honour thy father and thy mother, that thy days be long upon the land which the Yahweh thy God giveth thee. So Canaan didn't honour Noah. But a more specific one is that of Leviticus chapters 18 verse 7. The nakedness of thy father or the nakedness of thy mother shalt thou not uncover. She is thy mother. Thou shalt not uncover her nakedness. Shalom, until tomorrow, God willing.